Hey YouTube, it's Luke here from Astro Awakening. Welcome back to my YouTube channel where we discuss all things astrology, spirituality, conspiracy, and navigating the process of spiritual awakening from conditioned consciousness into responsibility for your own conscious awareness, your own belief system, and becoming a sovereign, free soul as we were born that way. So undoing the matrix control on our awareness, our perception, our identity, our selfhood, our livelihoods, our lives. So some interesting things I want to talk about in this video are COVID, the return of, and the second half of the video is going to be about the Indigenous Voice to Parliament referendum that is happening in Australia. And I'm going to have a look at the astrology of that in relation to the Australia birth chart. The first little bit around COVID is just to help people understand from an astrological perspective what I perceive to be going on in relation to that. There's a lot of fear around mandates and masks and forced vaccination returning. I don't see that this time. I see voluntary process, not a mandated process. So in other words, I don't see a mandate happening for masks. I think it'll be more like if you want to, if you can, or we recommend. I don't think they're going to go to the extent of mandating it. Lockdowns are an interesting one. I don't think we'll lock down, but we may get border locked. In other words, they might shut countries down. Now, you might be thinking, what do you mean when it's coming back or whatever, blah, 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 blah. It never was to begin with. It was a manufactured propaganda campaign that was organized, foretold, and set up way before 2020. And we had perfect astrological weather in 2020 to implement the agenda. So they weaponize the common cold and turns into the corona virus, corona, the crown virus. And crown was interesting because the opposite of the crown is the root chakra. And that's where everyone collectively was taken into the root chakra, which is fear-based survival, right? So fight, flight, survival. And you know that we were collectively brought down into that place systematically through the propaganda of the government and the media, because what was the very thing that left the shelves of the supermarket at the beginning of it? That's right, shit tickets. Shit tickets, really wiping the dot, right? Why? Because that's where you're living. You're living in your base chakra. So what a symbolic representation of the collective being in that. And you couldn't buy toilet paper because everyone panicked and went there and thought, going to shit myself or need to be shitting myself. And now I have to buy shit tickets as a result. So when we look at the astrology that was happening for that, that was a Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn, happens every 40 years. And not in Capricorn, that is, but Saturn and Pluto come together every 40 years. They came together in the 80s in Scorpio, the sign of sex, and we had the AIDS epidemic where they literally have the Grim Reaper on television scaring people into, you're going to die from sexually transmitted AIDS virus, which people did. It's a real thing. It's just where'd that come from? And how is that tied into the pharmaceutical industry? Because that was pretty much the solution to the problem that was manufactured through 2020, which problem reaction solution, the problem, Novid, right? It's a weaponized virus. The reaction, well, that was mandates, lockdowns, masks, that was social distancing. That was, can't travel, can't go anywhere. And then the solution, And the solution really came about at the end of 2020 as we moved into 2021. And that's an interesting sort of alignment too, because we had Saturn and Jupiter coming together that they do every 20 years. And they came together at 0 degrees of Aquarius on the winter solstice, summer solstice for us in the south, on the 21st of December, 2020, grand conjunction in Aquarius. very interesting point in the sky to watch, because Pluto, planet of death and rebirth, the planet of upheaval, but also the god of the underworld, and bringing a lot of the underworld to what? Aquarius, light, bringing it into consciousness, taking it from an unaware to into knowing, is going to move over that point in the sky, the 0 degrees Aquarius. It already has this year, and it's going to return there on the 21st of January next year. And, that story is still ongoing. Now, because we had COVID start during a Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn, it was really like a Saturn cycle. And Saturn's moved into Pisces. So when we here in Australia in particular went into severe lockdowns and mandates and things, that was about March, April of 2020, the beginning of that. And that was right as Saturn moved into Aquarius. Aquarius is the sign of the collective, humanity. It's a fixed air sign. So it's more of the totalitarianism, so top-down authority. And we had social distancing and mask mandates. So masking up, right? Because the sign opposite is Leo. Leo's about, hey, this is me, look at me. And it was like, no, don't look at you. So Saturn's gone into Pisces. So Pisces is boundarylessness. Pisces is the dissolving of reality. Pisces is illusory, deceptive, delusionary. Pisces deals in some pretty intense extremes, but it's a water sign and it's an emotional sign. Saturn's not super well placed in Pisces. Saturn likes Capricorn, Aquarius, and Libra. So definitely the air and earth element of Saturn's domain. In Pisces, it loses its power. Now, it's not ill-dignified, it's not in Cancer, or it's not in Aries, but it's still not very strong. So the power or authority to control, which is Saturn, which is government, which is Capricorn, which is Aquarius to a degree, loses that sort of power and effect when it goes into Pisces. But Pisces is the sign of selflessness, surrender. So it is highly likely that they are going to use fear again, which is a frequency. Everything is a frequency, a vibration. Use fear again to trigger a particular vibrational state, known as an emotional state, of fear, because Saturn being the planet of fear in the sign of Pisces, its emotions, and involuntary trigger a pandemic, but it will be a panic. And those affected by it will be those that are still living in a state of fear with the illusion that the government has their best interest at the heart, and they would never do anything like that. No. I'll get to that when we get onto the voice shortly. But, and also those that have continued the process of inoculation from the mystery, Novid, whatever it was or wasn't. And, it's highly possible that the inoculation is in the nanoparticles of that substance is pathogens that are activated or released into the cells of the infected person through frequency and vibration. So is there more of that coming? Yes and no. Yes is in the sense that most probably this story is still unfolding, and there is still the after effect, the consequences of people's choices during that period. And this is a hard pill for people to swallow, but no one was forced to be vaccinated. No one was forced against their will. Now, the choice was difficult, and they mandated that and made it very, almost impossible for a lot of people, especially the weak, the poor, the insecure, the unaware, the helpless, the despair, right? So they restricted your ability to work, to travel, to play, to visit, to move, like all those things. So then people made a choice. Well, I got to keep my job. I better get the juice. But they made the choice. And that's an interesting sort of reality for a lot of people to confront, which is that there was a choice that was made. And as difficult as that choice was, it was still your choice. Now, that doesn't absolve those that enforced that mandate and made it difficult and the blood on their hands, so to speak. But ultimately, we're moving into the age of Aquarius, the age of personal responsibility, humanity, and awakening. And part of the process of a soul maturing is to learn how to take 100% responsibility for its choices, for its position, for where it is. 100% responsibility. So, meaning that a lot of people made choices that they're probably going to be in a place of guilt, shame, regret for as we move forward into this year and into next year, especially because Saturn's in Pisces, which will be there until 2025. And it's moving closer to a conjunction with Neptune too. So it's really going to bring in this element of uncertainty and a weakening of energy. Right? Neptune energy really weakens the position, the energetic sort of state frequency. It does make you more sensitive. It can elevate consciousness into heightened transcendental imagination, creativity, brilliance in the sense of, the creative aspect through the use of the imagination, but also physicality in general becomes weakened. Now, this is all happening in the sign of Pisces, which is directly opposite Virgo. And the interesting thing about the polarity in our zodiac, which is a circle, there's always going to be a polarity. When you're emphasizing one particular part of the zodiac, the polarity point is going to be the unemphasized area. And often that's an area of either strength or weakness, depending on what's going on, but it's definitely brought into the element of what's happening in the unfoldment of the whole. So if you sort of emphasize a particular archetype or energetic placement within the great circle, the opposite point is going to be a point that a lot of things can play out. And if in particular you look at Saturn's transit, the polarity point of Saturn is really a physical, felt, experienced, real aspect of Saturn's transits. So Saturn was in Capricorn, that put pressure on the home, the family, and emotional state. Literally, Saturn Capricorn, conjunction with Pluto and Capricorn during the start of the pandemic, and it was like people were put in a very emotionally unstable state, which is the sign opposite Cancer, sign of the home and family also. So we were brought home, locked down, and also kept away from family. Then it moved into Aquarius, a sign opposite Leo, like I mentioned. So it put pressure on your ability to say, hey, this is what's right by me. I'll be the king of my own reality. This is what I have to say, right? There was extreme censorship. There was extreme social distancing and mandating into like movement. You couldn't move, and a literal shutting down of people's face, which the face is the unique ability to express oneself. So that's all Leo qualities. So we could expect with Saturn moving into Pisces, the sign opposite Virgo. Virgo is the sign of health, well-being, mind-body connection. So the illness, right? And the types of different illnesses that one could expect. So, yeah, I feel like it's highly possible that, whether it's propaganda that does this, or whether it's an energetic event such as pulsing of the 5Gs, whether it's solar activated, whether there's other weapons that modify weather that are also going to impact on this vibrational frequency, but ultimately it's going to be affecting the emotional energy. So emotional energy is very volatile to the different shifts in frequency. And the example of that, I forget the name of the guy's scale. I'll think of it and put it in here. But if you look at all the emotional expressions and their frequency or vibrational frequency, it's very interesting. And you could just also understand that when you're feeling low, when you're feeling sad, when you're feeling down, when you're feeling, like remorseful, or you've got guilt or shame, you feel what? You feel down. You don't feel up, right? So up being obviously a higher frequency because it's higher is up, lower is down. So your emotions can really affect, well, they do. They are your frequency. So you've got to try and come up into the heart, right? A very central, neutral sort of place to be. And that's a place of contentment, fulfillment, love, joy, passion, acceptance. These are the frequencies you want to be in, not in fear, anxiety, shame, regret, guilt, remorse, frustration, anger, resentment, right? All these low frequencies. You don't want to be down there. You need to be up here. Physically as well, there's the need to detoxify, purification, especially with this Neptune energy coming in, to purify, using water as a main source of purification and upping your water, but also water is emotions again, purifying your emotional state, but then physically purifying your body as well. And like I said, there's a lot of protocols, detox protocols that you can take in relation to the jibbity joop, clop, 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 shiol. Timelines for this to play out. I think if it happens, it'll be a wave. It'll be Northern Hemisphere first because they're moving into their winter, whereas in the South, we're moving into our summer. We tend to have less of that type of thing happening during summer because the sun's out. People's predisposition is more about happy mood. They're active. They're in the sunlight. But it might be, something that happens around Christmas time. Maybe triggered before that. We've got an interesting couple of new moons coming up. We've got a solar eclipse in October. In November, the new moon is in Scorpio, sign of death, directly opposite Uranus, and conjunct Mars in Scorpio too, while the nodes are in Aries and Libra. So the November new moon period is going to be one to really watch out for in the relation to triggering some heavier emotions and in relation to the idea of death or theme of death or the fear of death. Now, how does one navigate that? You have to confront that fear. You have to ultimately confront the fear, or the ultimate fear is the ultimate fear of what? Of death, because death represents nothingness or uncertainty or what's next. But as you take responsibility and you awaken on your spiritual path, you go to the point of realizing that you're not the body or the identity or the feelings or the thoughts or any of those things. You're the soul that's embodied experiencing those experiences, those sensations, but that's not who you are. So if you're not that, who are you? Well, the eternal part of you is the soul with the spirit that sort of evolves and incarnates through different life experiences. So the only inevitable thing we have when we become physical and born is death. That's the only thing we can all agree on is going to be the purpose or meaning of life is death. So the sooner you come to terms with that, the better. So you don't allow death or the fear of it to control you. Look back into 2020 and COVID and what was happening. They used the fear of death. Either you're going to die or someone you love is going to die or everyone's going to die, right? So that drove people's behavior. And it meant that they made choices based on that fear. And now they're probably really living the repercussions of those choices. It's disgusting. It's terrible. It's horrific. But it's the reality of it. And we have to, when we mature, confront the reality, take responsibility for our choices, even though they may have been difficult ones. For me personally, they could have knocked on the door with the army and said, "Sir, it's time. Your inoculation is due. Those that aren't wanting to are going to be placed in the death camp and put under the firing line." I would have said, "Take me away. I'm ready to go. If that's my fate, I accept it." There was no way that I was ever going to compromise my own ethics, morals, and values when it come to what I'm putting in my body and the reasons why. And that was certainly never, ever going to be one of them, no matter what. I was fully prepared to stand in that conviction and to make my choice. And in the process, I was very well insulated from all of the outcasting and all of that because I didn't give a fuck what people think. And I went through my awakening 14, 15. So, I was very well prepared to be outcast and misunderstood. And I don't care if people don't agree with me or not. So I didn't have to really confront oh, you don't fit in, you don't, whatever. I don't need other people's validation. So I was prepared at that point, as were many, to say, you know what, fuck it. I'm willing to lose my job. I'm willing to be outcast. I'm willing. I don't have to go to the footy again. I don't care about the pub. I don't really care if I never travel or leave Australia again. If they want to lock me out and make sure. And they tried for a period. And then it all undone. Remember? It all undone. Well, the undoing now is the impact and the effect of the choices that people made. Certainly, if you're in a position and they reintroduce the inoculation, it will not be mandated. In the sense that, like, in the degree it was previously, but it may be voluntary, especially for certain work environments. So you want to really choose whether you like your job more than your soul, I guess, is the answer, or the question to ask yourself. Do I like my job more than my soul, or the ability to awaken to my soul and to continue this process of evolution through this life and beyond? Or do I want to just go, fuck it, my job's important to me and I'd rather just do that? So that may be a situation that is presented, and it certainly was, in the last few years, and you make a choice. And I'm not saying you make right choice or wrong choice. You make whatever choice you want, but do not blame for the choices you make. Take responsibility. As hard as that is, as difficult as is, as inhumane as that was, that's not on you. It's on the people that have done this. And that's a separate issue. And their karma train will come. Time measures slowly, but measures consistently and doesn't miss a thing. So those that have done this for their own selfish means or greed, or from some position of authority and control, their karma will come. It's not for you to dish out. It's for you to just worry about you and your choices. When Pluto moves back over the 0 degrees of Aquarius, which is in January next year, this will be an interesting period of time, starting from the start of next year, because Pluto is activating the degree of the grand conjunction with Jupiter-Saturn that happened at the end of 2020, which was really the implementation of mandatory vaccination. So this story is still ongoing, and there's more to come here, but it's going to be a different take on it. It's certainly not going to be a return of what it was 2020. From an astrological energetic perspective, the potency isn't there. It'll be more of a voluntary process. That's not to say that there might be some pathogen, or there might be an outbreak, or there might be something, or a new variant, whatever. It'll be all vax related. It'll be all directly connected to the inoculation, in my opinion. And if that doesn't sit well with you, then you don't have to watch any of my channel. This is my page, my channel, my story, my perspective. So let's move on to the voice, shall we? You should understand it. Used to like that song, and now I'm a little bit But does he really own the rights to his own music? Because a lot of artists don't. They've sold off those rights to the record companies or the executives or the producers or whoever. I think you'll probably find that Sony or someone like that owns John Farnham's catalog. Just like Neil Young, when he came out, and he was, Joe Rogan was talking about this, and Neil Young was on Spotify, and Joe Rogan on Spotify, and Neil Young didn't give a fuck about any of that. It was the record company being puppet string, saying, Neil, you're going to do this. You're going to be our guy now. We own you. We own you. So poor John Farnham. He's been in an ill state for quite a while. I'm not even sure if he's out of hospital. He's had real serious issues with his throat and cancer and all sorts of shit. So him, the person, sign off on this? I probably think he signed off on his music a long time ago, and the producers, record companies, executives, whoever owns the rights is just the one that making the shots. So that's how it works. We live in this corporatization of everything. Even Australia is known as a corporate state. It's not a country, it's a corporate state. So there is an interesting, if you've never watched I Pet Goat 2, I recommend you watch that. And there's another one which I can't think of, but I will make it, when I edit this video, I'll put it in. There's another similar animated movie or short film like that, which illustrates the death of the corporatization of things as one of the systems of control that's webbing over the natural law here. If you're not from Australia and you're wondering what I'm talking about one of our national treasures, I guess, John Farnham, who's a singer and songwriter, had a song called You're the Voice, Try and Understand It. You probably heard it if you're outside Australia. It's pretty iconic. well, it's signed up to be the voice of the referendum. Yes vote. The interesting thing about this is this guy here. Look at this guy. Check this out, right? You really think he's calling the shots? You really think that this is his idea? You really think that this is, got anything to do with him personally or his political? No, he is a puppet, and a very poor puppet at that. And if you look around politically around the world at the moment, you'll notice that they're all piss poor, piss weak, fucking pathetic puppets. Like they're really scraping the bottom of the barrel, which tells me that we're at a point of great transition, because for how much longer does this go on before people really, 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 really wake up? And yes, people are waking up, but it's the type of people that wake up that just, what the fuck is this shit? And why are we allowing these pathetically weak-minded men and some really deranged women be the ones that call the shots, to say what's right and what isn't right, and what's good and what isn't good, and who should be doing what and how should be doing it? And they're backed by this corporate conglomerate, because notice like your big corporate chains and your big airlines and the big sort of corporations always back the government, don't they? They always back the government. Isn't that sort of weird? No corporate sort of entity has the balls to go against it. Not one. No, because it's the same thing. It's the same thing. So it's a corporate state. It's a corporate government. Right, so it's all corporations, and that's what they're trying to do here. Is they're trying to usurp sovereignty and the ability for you to be free and sovereign and to live and exist and be here on this land. So they're going to put you into this corporate sort of entity and enshrine, right, or enslave is another way to look at it, you into the Constitution. And they're using the poor Aboriginal Indigenous people as scapegoats into this, and they're the Trojan horse, like, oh yes, isn't this good? And it's about time, and the poor people were yeah, absolutely. All of that is all true, but at the same time, the other truth in this paradox is that the government is doing is not good for anyone, not only the Aboriginal or Indigenous, but also the white Australians. It is not good for anyone. I'll bring your attention to the Pink Bat scandal, the NBN scandal, the robo-debt scandal, the COVID scandal that the government has tried to implement, or the money that they've spent, or the shit that's gone wrong. When have they ever done anything for the betterment of the people? They don't. They do it for the betterment of their corporate interests, those that fund their political campaigns. Understand? It's those that are funding these puppets. It's those set to gain financially out of the control or the implementation or the spending of budgets. That's who's in control. And then who's in control then? Well, you have to go into all of the secret societies. And one of the big ones is the Freemasons. Now, not all Freemasons are obviously that way inclined, but there's obviously a faction within the Freemasons that is well-organized global sort of entity that has infiltrated corporations, political positions, media, sports, celebrityhood, and they've got their puppets and their people in positions, right? So they're pulling the strings. No wonder they want it all kept corporate, because they dwell in the shadow. They don't want identity. They don't want ownership. They just want the control and the money that comes from that. So this is an interesting turning point for humanity. And this, when you look at it, what's happening in Australia and Australia's birth chart based on the Australian Federation, the people that are behind this, and it is definitely not this character, not at all, but the people that are, they know what they're doing. They know what time it is, right? They know what time it is. What does astrology tell us? It tells us the fucking time. It's the cyclical cosmic clock. It's always telling us the time. What are the cycles? What time is it? When Saturn and Pluto and Capricorn come together, it was time for what? It was time for a pandemic, right? Because Capricorn is the goat god Pan, which is where we get the word panic from, or pandemic from, or pandemonium from, right? And we've got these poll petitions sending us to the pole to vote. Well, the pole, what have we got here? We've got the North Pole and the South Pole. They're polarities, polarity, right? So what is this doing? It's dividing. It suits the agenda of division. You don't want a united people. United people scares the fuck out of those in positions of authority and power and those wishing to control, because you divide and conquer. So they're doing this poll, right? The politicians are polling us. They're putting us into polls, and they're doing it with the day of this election. Sorry, excuse me. The day of this referendum is on the day of the South Node lunar eclipse in Libra. If there was a yes, no in the zodiac, it's Aries Libra, right? Yes, no sort of polarity in the zodiac. Libra is yes, and Aries is no. Why? Because you have to have a lot of fucking strength and courage and assertion and self-assurance to say no. It's easy to say yes. Oh, yeah. Right. So, what is the negative archetype of Libra is known as the pleaser, or another ways to say pleaser is the yes man or the yes woman. Oh, yeah. Oh, what do you think? If anyone lives with a Libran rising that's really like imbalanced, they'll be like, oh, I don't know. What do you think we should do? What do you want for dinner? I don't know. What do you think we should have for dinner? What do you want to watch movies? Oh, I don't know. What do you think? Right. They're the yes person. Okay. So they're doing this referendum on the day of the eclipse, right? On the South Node eclipse, and the sun is in Libra. But the interesting thing about an eclipse, right? Let me just have a look at this while we're speaking. The interesting thing about an eclipse is the occultation of the sun by the moon. The occultation, occult means to hide, to conceal, right? So what are they concealing? The sun represents the truth. The sun is the truth. The sun is the light, right? The biblical sort of connection to that is I am the light, I am the way, I am Jesus Christ. Jesus is the sun. That's why we have the sun, and we had Jesus, the Son of God. The sun isn't God, the sun is the Son of God. In other words, the sun is but a outcome of the outpouring of the all unlimited source of power of God. And the story of Jesus is just telling us the story of the sun. The sun is the truth. When you have an eclipse, the sun is hidden. The sun is concealed. The sun is occulted. If you want to do something to hide something, you would do it on an eclipse. If you want to hide the truth, you want to do it when the sun is hidden. So the truth of what this is about, it's not about whether this is I mean, that's the other thing about the referendum is like no one really can know what it is. What are we voting on? It's a voice. What does that mean? Like they haven't even given the details of what this is. Like, and they're rushing this through. Why are they rushing this through? Because we're in the Great Awakening. We were in the Great Awakening, the awakening of the people. We're waking up, right? And we're not all waking up at once. We're slowly waking up, and you wake up and you wake up someone else. How many people woke up in COVID? Well, the next thing's going to wake up more people, and it keeps on waking up people. And they know this, and we've reached the tipping point, or at least the point of no return. We're not going back to sleep, and more people are going to continue to wake up. You can know this too when you look around what they just recently did with the Indian landing on the moon. Why? Because the Indian people are waking up and they have to send them back to sleep. So they misdirect them and go, aren't we wonderful now? We'll land on the moon. What the fuck was that shit? That was Atari 87 or 83, right? That was what that. But if you have an emerging and awakening people, then they're more likely to go, oh, okay. So the eclipse, this is happening on eclipse, and the ruler of Australia's birth chart is Mars. Mars, because we're Aries rising, right? Australia's chart is Aries rising, which means Mars down here in the fifth house in Virgo. Mars is the ruler of the people. Well, what are we? We're bloody got a good work ethic, Australians. That's because our ruler is in Virgo, right? And we can do shit. And, you know, we're also a bit of a larrikin. We're in the fifth house. We don't mind a drink. We love to have a bit of fun. We don't take things too seriously. Fifth house ruler of the Aries rising sign. The rising sign of a birth chart of a country represents the people. Aryan, right? We're direct. We're up front. Well, at least we used to be. So Mars, when we have this referendum, Mars is in the seventh house. Opposite the people. Right? So this is opposite the people, but it's also known as foreign relations. Is this about a foreign takeover, foreign control, foreign influence or interference in what's right for the people of this land? And the people is not just The white people, the people under the constitutional settlement, it's all people. It's all people. And they're trying to enshrine, they're trying to actually control and remove people's ability to be sovereign on this land. And they're doing it through the corporate guise of control. They're hiding the details, they're hiding the truth of what's really going on. They're using the Aboriginal people as a Trojan horse to implement their hidden agenda. Now, the interesting thing is if you look at this chart where Pluto is moving towards a conjunction with the midheaven, but it's also directly in a square to the axis of the ascendant descendant. Pluto is an upheaval or a change or a death and a rebirth, and it's really challenging this sort of point across Australia's chart, further emphasizing polarity, right? So they do in a referendum where we've got this Libran quality. So the referendum is put up as we want the voice. If you're with it, right, you're an Australian and you want the best for the Aboriginal people and you're with the government, that's a yes. So that's Libran, because remember, that's easy to please. But you got to have a bit of courage. You got to have a bit of strength to say, no, it's not what we want. It's not what I want. It's not what I think is right for this country. It's not right for the people. So you got to be more Aryan, right? So the Aryans or the Aries in this sense would represent no, right? So now we've got this polarization. If you're a no, what are you being perceived and portrayed as? Racist. And that's a real bad connotation to have for anyone in relation to their country and the people of their country. And it takes away individual relationships and collectivizes, people into these groups and says, well, if you're a no voter, you're a racist. And I bet you there are some no voters that are racist. I bet you there are some yes voters that are racist. But by saying that if you vote a certain way, that makes you racist, bang, it's the polarization again. So what are people afraid that are also a little uncertain or unaware? They're more easily led. They don't want to be racist. And if you go over here into the no land, you're racist. Oh, because they're confused. They don't have all the information. They're a bit wondering, like, should I, shouldn't I? So what do? They just take the easy way out. And it's a South Node eclipse, so it's easy just to stay with the crowd. It's taking us fucking backwards is what it's doing. It is not taking us forward. It's taking us back to fucking enslavement. The other interesting thing that's happening in Australia's birth chart at the moment is we're moving through a period which is known as a progressed full moon, right? So we've got the sun progressed to 12 degrees of Taurus. The moon, actually, if we look now, is just moved over its opposition to the sun. The progressed moon and progressed sun are opposite each other. And progressed moons represent a culminating point of transition. It's almost like we've reached a peak in a cycle. So often around this period of time, you do have a bit of change that occurs. So already we're in this phase of there is change happening. And now we've got this referendum to fundamentally change the Constitution. And it's almost like there is the subtone of people wanting change. So you put a referendum at that point in time. Why? Because this is the change, right? And it's about time. And again, this is fantastic use of the knowledge of the time that it is, the clock that's happening, and then the implementation. Because here's the thing, when it's time for change, and then a referendum comes to give you change, people that are not aware, which is 70%, 65% of people that are not self-aware, that can't see through the veil, that are blinded by the conditioning in the matrix, they're primed for change. So you bring in a referendum where they feel like there's going to be change and they have a voice in that process, they're tuning them into this culminating point, right? And again, it's like now, they've been planning this shit for years. If you go back 2008, that was the progressed new moon that happened in 28 degrees of Aries. So you go back then and find all the different types of legislations and things that were in the process of being amended and changed and all sorts of things in preparation for what? For what was ahead. Because the people running the show, it's not this guy, he ain't, but the people behind him that are running the show, people in very powerful positions, the hidden people, the shadow people, the faceless men, let's call it that. They know what time it is. They know what time it is. That's the whole thing about astrology, is it's about time, cycles, right? Peaks, troughs, valleys, beginnings, endings, culminations. And if you know, you know. So the second that this referendum came out, and it was coming on the day of the solar eclipse, I'm like, of course they're going to do it on that day. It's exactly, they know exactly what time that is. That's time to conceal something. That's time for some big shifts and changes. That's time. So to round this off, you obviously know exactly where I stand in my personal view or opinion of what this, whether it's good or whether it's bad. Hopefully some of this astrology information has made it sort of a little bit more aware for you to go, okay, it's a bit rigged, right? So what can we do about that? You can stand, you have a voice, you can use it. Don't be afraid. Don't let fear to control you. If you have something to say, if you want to stand out or speak out about it, now's the time. Now is the time. Grow a set, stand in your convictions. You'll need that for what's to come with relation to any further, COVID measures. But you have an opportunity now. So, be unafraid to face ridicule and judgment and outcasting and projection, because you're only facing it from those that are consciously asleep and unaware. And have no concept or idea of like anything that we're talking about in relation to, they just go along with their conditioning. The conditioning for a long time has been to divide people based on race. So now we don't want to be that, right? We want to be all inclusive. And yeah, you're just signing up to the same death system. It's a corporate system. The word corporate has the word corpse in it because it's a dead entity. So they're living free sovereign beings at the moment, the Aboriginal, and they have the power to enable a pathway for even non-Indigenous Australians to become free and sovereign. And we sign them into the Constitution. We're almost saying now they don't take away that right and that sovereignty. And it's not only about the Indigenous people. I think that they shouldn't fall under the Constitution. And I think that the corporatization of a country is it has been done purely for a financial perspective and a game for those that know. Right, it's a big game. It's Game of Thrones. So who has the power, has control of all of what? The resources, the money, the land, the people. So this is just another step in the system of control. And I think that, this is part of the awakening process, is to sort of bit of a litmus test on, what we're prepared to stand up for and what we're prepared to accept. So let people call you racist. Let people call you like an un-Australian or whatever. Let them. Whatever. If you have an ability to spread the word or voice your opinion, do so in a calm, measured manner. Don't be reactive. Don't get angry. Like you see, when you see through the veil, it's like, okay, that's what they're doing. So it's no good to yell out and scream and get angry about it, because you're controlled by the very thing. You don't want to be angry. If it's making you pissed off and angry, then, I would say don't vote at all, and just keep your mouth shut and go about your business and do something different. There's thousands, millions of reasons to be angry at the system, because when you wake up to it, you're like, what the fuck? But that's not how you fight the system. You fight the system by walking out of it, by diminishing its power and control over your life and your choices. And you do that, and you had an opportunity to do that through COVID. So, you fight the system by disempowering it. You disempower it, not by resisting it. By just, no, it's not me. None of that's for me. None of that's what I want. None of that's affecting me. Whatever. go about your business. So it'll be interesting to get your own perspective and opinions on this. Hopefully this has not been too divisive for you. Obviously, I do put in my own opinion and perspective because this is my channel, but I also have to eliminate some of the astro components to this in relation to what time it is. And yeah, it makes sense that they're doing this now, but it also makes sense that you have a choice and exercise the power of that choice, the power of your voice. This isn't about just the Indigenous voice. This is about everyone's voice. And this voice is a really apt name because it's going to be the shutting up of voices. It isn't going to be the fucking welcome in of voices. It's going to be the shutting up of everyone's voices. So think very carefully about that. I'm Luke Bug from Astro Awakening. As always, peace out.